This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best all-in-one platform for all of your website building needs. Hey guys, it's Celestia, and over the past few weeks, the art community has been very passionately celebrating a huge win in the fight against AI art, the Supreme Court's ruling that it's ineligible for copyright. For the entire first week of March, everywhere I looked online, there was another video or article talking about it, because people were rightfully very excited that the legal system had finally made the long-awaited call that images generated by AI illegally trained on copyrighted art and photos were not themselves allowed to be copyrighted. Except that's not actually what happened. Despite widespread coverage suggesting otherwise, the Supreme Court did not rule that AI-generated images were ineligible for copyright, and the reporting on the case has been completely blown out of proportion and misinterpreted. I'm the first one who would want to celebrate a win against generative AI, but this isn't the win that people are saying it is, and I think that it's important to explain why and what really happened, because so many people are essentially saying, "We did it, boys, we won the fight," and we didn't. We need to keep fighting. This isn't over by any stretch of the imagination, and the misreporting of this case is resulting in the celebration of a victory that we haven't achieved. But before I explain all that, to the best of my ability anyway, let me take a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace. I've been working with Squarespace for a long time now, to the point that regular viewers frequently accuse me of cheating on them every time I make a video with a different sponsor. And there's a reason I've been gushing about them for so long. I've been using their platform for longer, and I sincerely believe that it's the best website building and hosting platform out there. And I would know, because I've used it to build everything from a site literally just displaying how cool my cat is, to a site showcasing a collection of cursed reaction images. More relevantly though, I've also used it to build both of my portfolios, both my previous cutesy, super branded one, and my current revamped, more professional one. And all of these, despite their myriad of obvious differences in both function and aesthetic, were just as easy to build using all of the tools and templates that Squarespace has to offer. Which isn't surprising, really, because they have such a massive library of versatile templates that no matter what kind of site you want to build, you'll find one, or many, that are perfect for it. And that includes online stores, because they give you everything you need to turn any site into one. The ability to manage payments and inventory, handle shipping and fulfillment, and even boost your SEO to help you get more eyes on your site and more customers for your store. And it's not just physical goods that you can sell either. They make it just as easy to sell services too, like consultations, event management, editing, and even art commissions with all of their tools. A streamlined workflow, built-in appointment scheduling, email marketing tools, and so much more. It's just as easy for your customers to shop at your store as it is for you to manage it too, because they offer all of the most popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay, and even allow you the option to send individualized, branded invoices to specific clients, so you can start accepting orders from all around the world with just a few clicks. So whether you're an artist in need of a portfolio, an entrepreneur building an online store, a creator setting up an interactive blog, or a small business owner making a landing page, Squarespace is the place to do it. And you can find out yourself by going to squarespace.com to get your own free trial today. And once you've built the perfect site that you're ready to launch, you can get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain by going to squarespace.com/Duchess, linked in the description. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and please go check them out. Now, let's take a closer look at the Supreme Court ruling that we're all being told makes AI-generated images ineligible for copyright, starting with the case that prompted it. Here's the story that's being widely circulated by media as true. Stephen Thaler, a computer scientist who created his own neural network called Duchess? It's an acronym, I guess there's no correct pronunciation, so I'm going with Duchess because it sounds funnier. He sought to copyright this image that it generated called A Recent Entrance to Paradise. This was rejected by the US Copyright Office back in 2022, which refused to grant the copyright on the basis of the image lacking human authorship. Thaler, in the following years, escalated the case to be reviewed by both the US District Court and the US Court of Appeals, and in both cases the initial ruling was upheld on the same basis. He then appealed to the Supreme Court to review the ruling, somehow still hoping for a different result, and then the Supreme Court, too, upheld the initial ruling that the image couldn't be copyrighted because it lacked human authorship, which would be a massive win for artists, because it would set a legal precedent for all other AI-generated images to be ineligible for copyright on the same basis. Because if his image couldn't be copyrighted because it was generated by artificial intelligence and not created by a human, then it would follow that only art made by humans is eligible. That's just not what happened at all. To explain what did happen, we have to go a little further back, because this is not Stephen Thaler's first legal battle over AI and copyright. Far from it, in fact, and that history is relevant. Duchess, which, if you're interested, stands for Device for the Autonomous Bootstrapping of Unified Sentience, isn't just a neural network-based AI system that Thaler created. He spent quite a while now arguing that it should be recognized as an inventor, too. See, he also refers to it as a creativity machine. It's apparently supposed to simulate human creativity by mimicking the way that the human brain makes connections, a process described as carefully controlled chaos that results in the formation of human-adjacent ideas. I'll link his site in the description as it provides significantly more detail as to how it works. The point is that because of its supposed capability of human-like creativity and innovation, Thaler has repeatedly asserted that it should be legally recognized as the creator of the quote-unquote ideas that it generates. In separate but very related cases, he's applied for patents that list it as the sole inventor of a flickering light that mimics neural activity, and a fractal drink container that's easier for robots to grip. He wasn't trying to give Duchess the patent, presumably because that wouldn't benefit him. He wanted ownership of the patent, but he applied for it, listing Duchess as the inventor and him as the creator of Duchess, the subsequent owner of the patents. Both applications were denied, rulings that were upheld even after he appealed them too. I bring this up because that's actually what happened here. The image Duchess created that Thaler was seeking a copyright for wasn't what we generally imagine when we hear the term AI-generated image. Unlike most, it wasn't prompted by a human. From what I understand, Duchess was simply running, allowed to create visual outputs, and created this image as a result. Ostensibly, there was no human participation in that, beyond, of course, the fact that I assume it was trained on human art and human writing that informed its process to begin with. As a result, his attempt to copyright it was based on the same logic, and that's why I bring up the previous cases. See, in most cases that get widespread attention when it comes to the topic of AI-generated images being copyrighted, the person seeking the copyright is doing so on the basis that it's their prompt and idea that contributed most to the image's creation, with AI simply being the tool with which it was brought to life, or that they edited and refined the image themselves after AI generated it, so much that the revision is significant enough to be defined as human authorship. Those are the cases that we're actually fighting for here, because those actually could set a legal precedent for making AI-generated images ineligible for copyright. We want those to lose. This, however, was not one of them. Thaler didn't claim that he should own the image's copyright because his prompt that created it constitutes human authorship, or because he revised it enough for those revisions to constitute human authorship. He used the same argument that he used in those patent applications, that Duchess created the image on its own just as a human could have, making it the author of the image, not him. He would just be the owner of the copyright based on the work-for-hire doctrine, the same thing that lets people own copyright to art that they hire an artist to make, assuming, obviously, that the artist has signed off on that. And that is why the Supreme Court actually declined to review his appeal. Not because images generated by AI can't be considered to possess the human authorship required for copyright, but because Thaler stated the author of the image to be his AI system, and upon a review of the Copyright Act, they concluded that author is a title that can only be attributed to a human being. An artificial intelligence cannot, per their assessment, be legally considered to be the author or inventor of anything. That is all this case has actually established, and it has nothing to do with whether or not AI-generated images themselves are eligible for copyright. The basis for the decision was, to my understanding, that the law simply isn't equipped to consider anything other than a human being an author or inventor. Like, look at it. So much of copyright law is based on the fact that the creator of the copyrighted thing will die, or is from a certain country. We were recently given the ability to use very early iterations of Mickey Mouse's design because of the post-death limitations of Walt Disney's copyright on them. The copyright and the way it's legally handled are dependent on the creator being an American and being mortal. An AI can't die, and it can't have a nationality regardless of its creator's nationality. It also can't sign off on the relinquishment of commercial rights. Like I said before, the work-for-hire doctrine only applies if the human artist that created the art signs an agreement allowing someone else to own the copyright to it. AI isn't capable of providing that consent. If we begin to allow AI authorship in copyright, we essentially dismantle the way in which copyright is litigated at all. The fact that the Supreme Court ruled in a way that suggests that they're unwilling to rewrite all of copyright law to allow AI authorship is significant and meaningful, and that is a win that's worth celebrating. But it isn't the win people are saying it is, because it's completely independent from how AI-generated images themselves are legally defined. The court didn't even rule on any of the important arguments that we need addressed, because they didn't have to. The questions we really need official, proper, legal answers to are how much human involvement in AI-generated images constitutes human authorship, how much post-generation revision is required for an initially AI-generated image to be eligible for copyright as a human creation, how to actually prove any of that on paper when applying for copyright. The Supreme Court didn't have to answer any of those questions when they denied Thaler's appeal, because his appeal wasn't based on any of them. He wasn't claiming human authorship. He was claiming ownership while attributing authorship to an AI. All this ruling actually determined was that human authorship can't be granted to an AI, not that the human authorship required for copyright can't be met by AI-generated images. Further, we also need to look at the wider issue here, that it wasn't actually a Supreme Court ruling at all. Now, admittedly, as a non-lawyer, I could be wrong. This is just based on my understanding of the results of my research. I'm by no means an authority on any of this, but to my understanding, they didn't actually officially rule on the issue. They just denied Thaler's appeal to them to reconsider the initial ruling. They basically said, instead of making a decision about whether or not the initial ruling was right, we're just going to decline to consider it at all because there isn't a basis for us to. Like if you get in a fight with another kid at school, the teacher says, you were in the wrong, enjoy detention. You tell the teacher, well, I think you're wrong, let me talk to the principal. And then the principal says, you haven't given me any evidence that suggests that the teacher was wrong about their decision, so I'm just not going to get involved. If the principal actually had said, based on my assessment, I agree with the teacher and you deserve that detention, then that would set a precedent for future students to also get detention after doing the same thing you did, and vice versa. But because he didn't, the fact that you got detention has no bearing on whether or not anyone else will. This, to my again limited understanding, is fundamentally the same. The whole reason this case was considered a win against AI-generated images being copyrightable was because it was ostensibly setting a legal precedent, and a lot of the law is based more on precedent than technicalities. Legal disputes are complex. The context of individual situations often makes it difficult to rule on them based solely on what the letter of the law says about it. Instead, we often rely on past cases. If the case presents a question that the law itself doesn't answer clearly, courts cite similar cases that have answered similar questions in the past based on the logic that if those rulings were correct, then a similar one would be correct here. If this was actually ruled on by the Supreme Court, that ruling would set a precedent that could be cited in future cases. It would mean that if other people applied for copyrights based on the same core arguments, they could then be denied based on the fact that this case was denied. From everything I've read though, that is not the case. Which means that even if this case was about whether or not AI-generated images could be copyrighted, it still wouldn't set any legal precedent. And the legal precedent is the thing we're all celebrating for something the case wasn't even about. I think that's why the dishonest reporting on it makes me so upset. This fight against AI-generated images being allowed to be copyrighted is so immensely important, and headlines everywhere are basically telling us that we've won it, that we can call it a day because the Supreme Court finally agreed with us. The Supreme Court declined to even involve themselves with the issue, and it was an issue that was completely legally separate from the one that we're fighting to have addressed. Number one, way to kick artists while we're down by giving us false hope that someone is finally in our corner. The last thing we need is to finally be given a glimmer of hope only to find out that it was a lie. Number two, it's making people think that we don't need to keep pursuing that glimmer anymore. I'm seeing so many people online saying that the matter is settled and we don't need to keep pushing the legal system to answer those questions properly and with clarity and finality anymore. And part of me wonders if that's intentional or not. I'll devolve into conspiracy theorizing if I indulge that thought too much, which isn't productive to do in a video, so I'll stop before I start. But what matters is that we can't let this ridiculously overblown misinformation make us think that our fight against AI is done. We need to keep fighting because this is not a victory, at least not in the way people are claiming it is. The United States Copyright Office hasn't concluded that AI-generated images are ineligible for copyright. This case had no bearing on that. In fact, per what I believe to be their most recent report on the matter, the most they're willing to directly state is that an image requires human authorship to be granted a copyright. They're also still directly stating that AI can be used as a tool to facilitate human authorship, and therefore, if enough criteria are met for that human authorship, an AI-generated image can be granted a copyright. They have also completely and utterly failed to define what those criteria are, leaving it a still open question as to how much human involvement and revision is actually required and provable for that to happen. Copyrights are being granted to images created with AI assistance, something I've already covered one example of in a previous video, linked in the iCard above if you're interested. If the Copyright Office determines that a human has contributed a sufficiently meaningful amount to the final image, it can be granted a copyright, based on their assessment of vibes, I guess, given that we have nothing concrete to go on in terms of judging each one objectively. That hasn't changed. This has contributed absolutely nothing to that. I'm not saying it's meaningless. As I said, it's significant that the Supreme Court isn't willing to upend the entire copyright system to allow for an AI to be considered the author or inventor of something, at least for now. That is a victory, albeit a tenuous one given that they didn't technically rule on the issue at all. But this is not the victory that people are saying it is in the fight against AI art, and I hate that it isn't. But I need people to understand that we can't stop fighting because of it. The entire case has been so sensationalized by the media that a dangerous number of people think that we can because we won, and we didn't. I wish this was a more positive video, because there's nothing I want to cover more than the kind of win that we're being led to believe that it is. I'm sorry that it isn't, but this is a fight worth fighting anyway, and as long as we keep fighting it, I'm still hopeful that I will be able to cover that win someday. Finally, if anyone is interested in reading up more about Duchess or the case, I have linked my resources that I consulted in the description. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Special thank you as always to channel members Joseph Solomon, TC Pratt, Haruki Saluzzo, Extinction Animation, Indy the Hedgehog, Kai the Memer, Jazz, Just Sayori, Hailstorm, Darkholder, Another Foxboy, Palestar, and Cyber Tori, as well as patrons Batman, Kyle Lowe, Kim Yin, Crazy Asar, Gentong, MG, Blah Mage, TC Pratt, Celine Moongazer, El Jichia, The Stray Dog, Decagon, Jenny Chan, Cat Bus, Lucy Amajiki, Selena Beebe, Pry Day, Peel, Wingtang Wong, Marie Greer, Potato, Jazz, Voidwalker, Latte Tabby, Christian Cook, Adam Surovietz, Doriaki, Various, Hailstorm, Emo Queen Jules, Show, That's It, Craig, Scarlet Flame 234, The Names Are Gone, Lubuka Owo, and Art of Amethyst Fable, and I'll see you in the next one.